if you look up health in the dictionary, it's the absence of symptoms or disease. So right off the jump, I can't be healthy. So very early on, I thought, well, I need to redefine health. And especially if I'm going to get out there and say to people, I'm going to help you have better health, then we're going to need to write our own definition. I guarantee you my mental health, my emotional health, my gut health, my metabolic health, none of those would be as good if I didn't have this autoimmune diagnosis.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm so glad you're here. I'm a physician, mom, coach, author, publisher, and I am passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so they can build their most beautiful future. Today, we have an inspiring guest who took her experiences as a patient as inspiration to learn more about how we can reclaim our own stories and affect our health, as well as that of others through the power of coaching. A doctor of pharmacy, a coach, and a person living with multiple sclerosis, Amy Behimer is passionate about helping others learn to live healthier lives, to embrace helpful habits, to feel better when living with autoimmune disease. Focusing on actionable habits, Amy helps listeners of her podcast, Autoimmune Health Secrets, on their journey to navigate life with autoimmune disease and form healthy habits. Amy, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
I can't thank you enough for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. What inspired you to, first off, become a pharmacist? And how did you find yourself pivoting in your career to become a health coach as well?
Good question. I love hearing all the hats you wear. And so I'm thinking of mine. I'm a pharmacist, which is like the scientist in me, and a coach, which is the helper in me, and, an aunt and a wife and a friend, and, someone living with an autoimmune diagnosis, or 3 or 4. And so all of those just shape who I am in so many ways. But the pharmacy part my mom is a nurse. My stepmom is a nurse. So I think I knew that I wanted to be in healthcare. I loved the idea of, again, digging into the science and math of it. And so it was a natural fit. Where the coaching came in is through my multiple diagnoses. So started in high school is the first time I heard the word autoimmune. And I was diagnosed with a skin condition that was autoimmune. It's called vitiligo. And at the time, I didn't really think too much of it. Otherwise, I was a teen. I'm like, I don't like these white patches, but what are you going to do? You keep on living. When I went to pharmacy school in my mid-20s, or I started, in my early 20s, I started learning everything that can go right with the human body and then everything that can go wrong. And again, this autoimmune word pops up, and it's, I'm learning how they cluster and how if you have one, then you could have others. And I started to get worried. Okay, what is my body trying to tell me? So a few years later, I was diagnosed with a thyroid condition called Graves. And at 27, I ended up diagnosed with what I call my life quake. It was my body's attempts at whispers really turning into screams, and that was multiple sclerosis. So at that point, I really was listening, and I needed to learn more about what my role in my health was. And if you looked at me from the outside, I wasn't unhealthy. I looked like everybody else. But if you notice, everybody else doesn't eat that great. You kind of eat a lot of junk. I was eating a lot of junk. I was raised in the 80s, 90s, and you get into low fat craze and processed food craze and things like that. So I wasn't feeding my body insanely high quality things. And now I realize food is just one piece of the equation. But I went back to school for training and education in functional medicine and started learning about, wow, there's a whole lot we can control. And I love the vehicle of a habit because there's so much good research behind them. Not only the habits that can help our bodies and our brains and the healing happen, but also the science behind how to actually change habits. So very quickly, I realized I don't want to become another expert. I don't want to be a practitioner of functional medicine. I want to help people actually make the changes that are simple and that they know that if they could just make them, they would feel better and improve their chances of functioning better too. So once I put that coach hat on, it is just my passion. I just love it more than anything. It's energizing. And again, it is just my purpose in this world is to help people, I say, have a healthier and happier life after a diagnosis than before.
And I know I've heard you speak about when you mentioned that have a healthier, happier life after a diagnosis. I've heard you speak on the thoughts you had as you were navigating seeing life from the, your future, from the perspective of now I have this diagnosis, right? Now I don't just have the degrees and right all of the dreams. And now I have this diagnosis. And you had to learn for yourself, for your health and your mental health, how to live with that diagnosis in a different way so that it stopped limiting you. What were the thoughts you had initially after you were given your diagnosis, and how did your relationship to your diagnosis and the thoughts you had about it change over time?
The thoughts I had were the ones that were learned, in school and throughout my profession. I've given presentations on multiple sclerosis. And what are the words that you use to describe it? Chronic, neurodegenerative, progressive, disabling. I mean, the natural thoughts I had were, this is what my life will be. My life will always be a little bit worse. I can try to make the best of it, but my life will always be a little bit worse. And the funny thing about thoughts like that is that they feel very, very true. And even in my life, if I lined up 100 friends and family, they all would agree with me because it feels true. And that thought, that belief that my life would always just be a little bit worse, felt terrible. It felt painful. And one of the reasons I even knew that coaching existed was I stumbled upon a coach who was a mindset coach. And the reason I was looking for that, or I didn't even know what I was looking for, but I was cleaned up my diet. I mean, if you looked from the outside, it was like I'm eating, I'm putting quotes, perfect. I was moving probably compulsively just to prove that I'm still exercising. I was checking all the boxes. I was meditating. I was, doing all the things that we do for to be healthy, and that we can see health gurus telling us to be healthy. But something was missing. And what was missing was the belief that my life could be just as good. Not only just as good, but it could be maybe even better. And the first time that somebody showed me that the thought that my life was always just going to be a little bit worse, first time someone showed me that as optional, I mean, that just blew my mind open of, wow, because when I think that, when I believe that, I am operating from a state of fear. I'm operating from a state of uncertainty. And so it was a tiny, tiny, subtle shift to, it is possible, just possible, my life doesn't need to be worse. And adding in that possibility, when I check in, that made me feel curious. And that curiosity drove every action from there. And so I like to say that I watered and fertilized and nurtured that belief seed that my life didn't need to be worse because of this diagnosis. And I think it took probably a solid decade of giving it so much love, finding evidence of it in the world, where now, if you came to me and you said, Amy, your life would be better if you didn't have this diagnosis, it's such a strong belief that I would say that is ridiculous. That's like you telling me the sky is green. And so that's the process that I had to go first. And I had to find, how is this just habitual thinking, and how can we apply what we know about changing habits to our thinking and our feeling patterns? Because once we can do that, we really are unstoppable in terms of what is possible for, again, a happy and a healthy life. Because if anybody has felt unhealthy, it's really hard to feel happy when you feel unhealthy. And so I think the two go so hand in hand.
Absolutely. And that resonates so deeply. I appreciate you sharing that. And I feel that all of our listeners can think back to a moment in their lives, or maybe a moment in every single day or throughout the day, where they have that limiting belief that from here on out, it's downhill,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's their health, their relationships, it's financial, it's goal-based, whatever it is. It's so easy to get stuck in feeling like this feeling is forever and it's only downhill from here. But we can't see a different future if we get stuck in that. And we will, like you've talked about, and we talk about it a lot here on Talks with Dr. Shafer as well. Our brain can only see what it expects to see. If we expect to see bad things, we will certainly find them, because all you have to do is turn on your television right now.
Yeah.
There's plenty, but there are also so many good things. There's so many opportunities for us that we won't notice if we don't expect them to be there, because we're so busy expecting the bad. And so I find that part of your journey so resonating and so inspiring. Is that something that, as a coach, I know you've worked with many people and you have a framework, you've developed so much to help people who also have autoimmune disorders of various types. Is that a shared belief, a common belief in the people that you've worked with?
Absolutely. I call the two symptoms that bind a lot of us with diagnoses, fatigue being one of them. There's a lot of very real exhaustion from the realities of living with a diagnosis. And some of that is physical and very real. And some of that is added on with these mental and emotional patterns that we get ourselves in. But the other shared symptom is this uncertainty where, you know, it can feel very uncertain. And then we kind of back up and we go, wait, all humans live in uncertainty, whether we realize it or not. We may just have a certain path in front of us that makes it a little bit more real, but it's very shared that health feels heavy. It feels a little bit outside of our reach, or it feels like there is a symptom or a limitation that is going to get in the way from me having the life that I want. And so, yes, a lot of people, we share that. And what I like to say is, you know, as we are heading somewhere, you know, whether it's to a certain part of our life, whether it's to feeling purpose, to feeling connected, to feeling joy, there may be some roadblocks that come up. And just like a GPS does not say, okay, turn around, go home. It says rerouting, rerouting, rerouting. And so what we do is we get creative. We learn how to reroute around these roadblocks, processing any grief that is very real. I mean, this is, even though we're using our mind to help us with this, it does not mean it's in our mind. We have very real limitations and symptoms that people deal with, but finding these ways to reroute give us our best chance to not only feel better day to day, but also those are the things that help our bodies function better into the future. And so, like I said, it gives us the best chance to be able to create better health in the future. I often say that if you look up health in the dictionary, it's the absence of symptoms or disease. So right off the jump, I can't be healthy. So very early on, I thought, well, I need to redefine health. And especially if I'm going to get out there and say to people, I'm going to help you have better health, then we're going to need to write our own definition. And so I call it autoimmune health. And I like to include the word autoimmune because I want to take credit for the health that I'm going to create because of this diagnosis. I guarantee you my mental health, my emotional health, my gut health, my metabolic health, none of those would be as good if I didn't have this autoimmune diagnosis. You know, maybe my running speeds or my balance or some other parts of my health may not be the same, or they may not be like they were when I was younger in my 20s or 30s. But there are certain aspects of our health that, I mean, I wouldn't trade for the world.
That's such a gift of a perspective. And I appreciate you sharing it with us, because we're all hoping for health. That's why we're listening to this. That's why we're having this conversation. The two of us is we are hoping and believing in the fact that we can live healthier lives every day through making choices, through forming habits. And that doesn't mean the absence of disease, disorders, or limitations, because that's not reality for any of us on this earth. Maybe there's another planet in the universe that happens. I doubt it, though.
I don't think so. Yeah. So if you're listening, write that definition out. I mean, really challenge yourself. Say, what needs to happen for me to be able to say, I am healthy? And when you look at your definition, really make sure it's in your control, right? Make sure it is coming back to the things that you can influence. So mine has evolved over the time, but my current working definition of autoimmune health is the pride that I feel knowing that I'm doing what I can to show up for those I love and for myself. And so it does not matter what symptoms happening. It does not matter what goal I set. I can feel proud. I have control of that. And so again, we set ourselves up for success by working with the words that we use all the time, but making them work for us.
Now, when you've worked with your clients on their autoimmune journeys, beyond the limiting beliefs that we've already discussed, are there other common blocks that people find that you find systematically? If I basically have a worksheet on this, or if I troubleshoot for these things, we're going to solve 90% of the roadblocks that we need to move forward towards our goals, one. And two, also, what is your goal and why, to make sure that we're heading towards your true goal and not some external validation that's not actually going to make you feel happier, make you feel healthier.
The scientist in me, again, loves that there is this wonderful pool of research on why goals fail. And it boils down to 6 reasons that goals fail. And I have never met a person with a goal, or I've never experienced any type of goal that does not get off track that isn't one of these 6 reasons. And I like to say it's like having the questions to the test, like back in school, when somebody gets their hands on what the questions are, the teacher tells you this is going to be on the test. We have the questions, we have the hurdles that are going to get in the way, and we even have the answers. We have the strategies that get us around those obstacles as well, but we still have to take the test. So again, it kind of comes back to a limiting belief of, do we believe that we could feel better, that we could think better, that we could habit better, with those outer habits and the actions that we do? And if we do believe that's possible, then again, that curiosity of, well, how could it happen? That is often the first shift that needs to happen, so that people feel ready to, really see what is there? Is there a different way to think about this? You kind of mentioned that perspective shift. And I love the idea that sometimes a miracle is a change in perception, because it is available to us in any moment. And it really can be the difference between 2 different paths that are radically different. They say your life will go in the direction of your strongest thoughts. And so if you are constantly feeding the monster of, I have this disease, I have this symptom, I have this limitation, our life will go that way. But just letting in the space for this autoimmune health, this different way, is often all it takes to shift that direction just a little bit. There's those stats about a plane leaving LA. It's like 3.5 degrees determines whether you land in New York or Washington, DC. And tiny shifts like that in your habits, in your thoughts, really can make such a profound difference on the course of our life.
I love that. So there's the biggest focus is on limiting beliefs, mindset, and developing that growth focused mindset. And I want to tell you my cheeky tool that I use with people who are hoping to help shift their focus. I like to call it the butt wheel, BUT. And but it's cheeky to get you to laugh, because
Yeah.
If we're laughing, we're disarmed, right? We've put our armor down. So once we're laughing, we're thinking, okay, Dr. Schaefer, what's the butt wheel? Well, the butt wheel is changing the direction. So when we think about forming a new habit, it's easiest to start with the resources we have to our avail, not to set such a lofty goal that we don't even have what we need to take the first step towards it.
Yep.
And so instead of, a lot of people are very anti-but. A lot of people say, don't use the word but. But's a bad word. But's not a bad word. It's just that when we say, I want to be healthy, but I have multiple sclerosis, for example, to use your initial limiting belief, it's harder to think of the and, but it's easier to say, you know what? Use all the same words, start from where you are, but just flip the but. I have multiple sclerosis, but I want to be healthy. And it's saying that I want to look forward in the future to what it is that I can do to meet my goal rather than turning my focus to the past, which is what but often does. We look in our rearview mirror and we say, I want this, but, and we look back, but we can't go forward. Like you said, like you can't go two directions at once. So if you're having these limiting beliefs and you don't change the trajectory of your thoughts, you're not going to go on the path that is within your goals. And so you made me think about the butt wheel and about how powerful it is to just simply change the trajectory of our thoughts so we can go in the direction we want. Now, when you do that work and when you work with someone like yourself, like a coach who helps you specifically with health and specifically with autoimmune disease and disorders, and you feel like, okay, now I'm past the contemplation state, right, where I want to. Now I'm really feeling ready to make changes and pick up new habits that are going to be basically like little destination points on my journey to my goal. And we often think about, well, what are some destinations? You know, you talked about physical fitness. You know, you talked about that almost that compulsive desire to be physically fit, right? And we think about other things like diet and sleep and stress management. Let's talk about some of the big topics that you work with people to address through healthy habit building today to get our audience in that contemplation state and maybe thinking about how can I work towards forming, what are the big habits, right? And how can I get started on them?
This is the fun part. So, overwhelm, I would say, is the number one emotion that people come to me in. And that's not going to change as long as the rapid speed of information available keeps coming at us. I mean, with AI, there is too much information. It's contradicting itself. It's flooding. It can feel really comfortable to learn more or to think, oh, I just haven't found the answer. So the first thing is to address this overwhelm by recognizing that our focus on one area is going to be our best friend. I mean, a laser can cut through rock. And focusing on one area and developing the skill of how to make progress in that area is a skill that you get to take with you to the next goal and the next habit and the next area. And so, first of all, just starting with the calming of your mind of, okay, I can start small. And so I created a quiz because, again, people are like, where do I start? Well, there's some good science on where is maybe your lowest hanging fruit or your biggest bang for your buck. And it pulls in that desire that you have on where to start. And it will give you a result, a personalized result that lands in one of 6 key areas of our lifestyle. I call these 6 key areas the controllables because we acknowledge there are things we cannot control. This is Earth, this is being human. But the more we can redirect our focus to the things we can control, the better it feels and the healthier we will become. And so these 6 key areas are not going to be any ones that you haven't heard of, and that's good news. The difference is that it is a framework that calms overwhelm because it reminds you that everything that you could be doing fits into this framework. It's holistic, and it reminds you that we don't have to be in a rush. In my coaching program, in my membership, we actually take it. It's a spoke because it's called the Habit Hub for Autoimmune Health. And it's a hub on purpose because you cannot outnourish or outrun a crappy mindset. You cannot, if you super focus in one area, you're likely robbing from another. And that wheel can be a bumpy ride. And so when we see how it all fits together, again, we get to get some relief and some peace knowing, okay, we are going to get to that area. And we take it a spoke per month. So every year we know that we are going to hit each of these areas twice for that balance. But number one, no surprise, is mindset. And mindset is where we learn the principles of this. What are some of these beliefs? But don't be fooled, because we're going to use mindset through all the rest of them too, because that is so much of the strategy of how we change things in a way that feels good. But we have mindset as one. You mentioned it. Food and how we are fueling ourselves is the second area. Movement of all sorts is the third area. I call it R&R, rest and relaxation. That covers sleep, and that covers how do we get stress, chronic stress, under control, because it is not only a cause of disease, but it's also an effect of disease. So it's a huge one. The fifth one is connection or relationships. And the sixth one is what I call good stress. And that good is in quotes because sometimes taking on a challenge in the name of growth is exactly what we need to get stronger. And so recognizing that we can do hard things, whether it's metabolically or cognitively or emotionally, can be such a good thing. So those are the 6 key areas. I've never found a habit or a goal that doesn't fit into one of those areas. So it's a beautiful way to not get lost. And, I have clients, they read a book or they heard a podcast or they saw this on social media. You get to see, oh, where does this fit in? Okay, this can fit into my plan because I'm accounting for all these things that help us feel and thrive better with any diagnosis.
And I want to really hone in on the timeline that you talk about and that you're hitting it more than once over a year. So that tells you that we don't expect to fix. I'll use that word. It's not the right word, but
yeah, no, it's a good one.
I think it's the word that maybe resonates with what we want. Like when we're cruising on social media and we see someone who has something we want, we're like, oh, I have that problem. I want to fix it. And they've got the solution, right? Whereas it goes deeper than that. And we know that. And that's why, like you said, the mindset piece, that's gonna bleed over into everything, right? We're not fixing anything. We are addressing our mindset. We are forming new habits, and we are doing all that in a graceful dance with who we are as a person, with a lot of grace and compassion.
Yeah.
And the desire to build us up and stop breaking ourselves down, which is so much of what many of us have been doing our entire lives when we try
Amen.
to go after a goal and it doesn't go the way we hope or expect it to, or the way we see someone else doing it, right? We break ourselves down, and then we're actually further back from the goal that we want, not closer. So I love how you talk about the repetition, how these things are going to bleed together, but don't fear, don't get stuck in overwhelm, or you use the word flooded, which I think is the perfect word for someone that overwhelmed doesn't feel like the right word. Just that feeling of, where do I even put this? Where do I even start? It's like, okay, we have baskets for these things, right? And sometimes when we're in this basket, we might say, oh, these two things are alike. And we might just develop more of an understanding of ourselves and how we make habits, how we have formed habits in the past and how we have reinforced them, right? So it's all this learning process. But it goes back to something you said earlier about that it was really a 10-year process for you to get to where you are. And I think that's so important to recognize. There's no quick fix, but it's worth it when you do this work.
Yeah. And some you'll see, like, you turn on the light and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to think that anymore. And I say some habits stick quick. It's like, wow, I just needed the awareness. But it's nice to have those slow burning ones in the background that you're willing to keep in mind. And so one of the tools that just makes all the difference is I have this big picture tracker, to really help people hold all these things we could be doing and recognize only a couple are in the now category. Like, this is a goal now. Then we place some in the soon. I'm going to get to this soon. Some we can put in later. And again, we get to calm that overwhelm knowing that there is a process. And the other piece about what you mentioned on social media is there's so much about tips and tricks and habit hacks. Those only work when you do them the once. But what we want to do is we want to find the ones that feel good. We want to make them habitual. We want to put them on autopilot so that they just become who we are. Because when they become who we are, we stop spending energy. We don't need to focus on those anymore. And then it allows us to shift our focus to the next thing. And it's not like the next thing, oh my God, I'm never done. It's like, oh, this is awesome. I'm never done with health. I mean, none of us I haven't graduated. I'm still going through these rotations of the hub with my people right alongside them, because you and I today are different than you and I in 6 months and in 2 years. And so it comes back to not finding the right habit to do. It's learning the skill of assessing which ones could I do? Which ones will I try? Oh, how did that go? What about this? Did my body like that? And we just really become nimble, and we learn this process of how to listen to ourselves, respond to ourselves, and challenge ourselves in a really beautiful way over time.
Yeah, coaching is such an incredible skill to learn. And one of the words that you used very early in our conversation was curiosity. And that's just such a foundational piece of coaching, is inviting someone to get curious and to question things and to take ownership of your own journey. I reflect a lot on this, and I wanted to speak to you about it today as someone who's a doctor of pharmacy. You know, when I look back at my journey as a physician and I think of, patients who you could give them all of the right tools, but if they didn't have the habits in place, they didn't have the mindset in place, those tools weren't going to work. Square peg, round hole.
Yep.
It wasn't going to work. And I can imagine from a pharmaceutical standpoint too, if you're, for instance, working in a pharmacy, like I won't say a brand, but a local pharmacy, and someone's coming in and you're telling them all the data. They're nodding, they're confirming they've heard you. They sign the form on the little pad, and everyone thinks we've done our job. And then they
Check,
go
check.
home
Yep.
and they don't take the medication the way that you had hoped they would, the way you instructed them to, because there was somehow, despite everyone's best intentions, there was a gap there, or there was a gap in what they could do at home that wasn't communicated because we don't have time. We don't have systems to figure these things out. Right. So I think of all the times that you as a physician would write down, you're titrating up a new medicine, and you're titrating down another medicine, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to write this down really, really detailed for you because I want to make sure it's safe and I want to make sure it goes well. You
Yeah.
go through all this and there are still problems, right? There's still missed doses. There's still issues. Well, because I've got my great titration plan, but it doesn't touch on what are some of the biggest issues that are, one, why we're having issues with the medications, and two, why we're not really getting the best efficacy with our treatment overall for what they're coming to see me. And so I think it's so foundational for a patient to have this experience, as well as for a physician to have the mindset of understanding that just because you know how the body works, the
Yep.
biochemistry, and just because you know the pharmacology and the anatomy and all of those things, and you follow best practices, doesn't mean you will be doing the best for that individual patient.
I say it all the time. A medication only works if you take it, and a habit only works if you can make it. And, I think what inspired me early on was we have this book called Atomic Habits, which everybody has on their shelf. I've never met someone who hasn't heard of it, read it twice. but there is something missing, the disconnect of on the page versus how we implement it. And so everything I do in my coaching is how do we take this and apply it in real life? And it's not, oh, we wait until this slows down or that slows down. It's got to work in the midst of our real life. And that really, I have taken such a pride and ownership in to say, I don't care who you are. I believe in these 6 reasons that we don't make the habits or that we don't do what we want to do. I believe that I can help overcome each one of those. And so I'm so confident in that. And, another thing with coaching is that someone else's belief in you, you can borrow that until you build up some of your own. So if you're listening, I believe in you. I guarantee if something has felt hard, it's one of these 6 reasons, and we can work our way around it. And one of those things that I think also is missing now, if you've maybe tried other things, or, I'm speaking to the people who sometimes end up beating themselves up because they've tried things and they think it's their fault and they just don't have it in them and they're just not consistent. It's not your fault. You're human. Your human brain is functioning exactly how it should be. We should all be taught this in elementary school. And you best believe my nephews and niece are hearing this type of thing, so they know it's not them. But it's normal. And the thought that, oh, I should be able to do this on my own. It is one of the most toxic thoughts that, learning a new skill set every year, about 70+%, it changes a little bit year after year. 70% of people want to eat better for a New Year's resolution. 60+% want to move more. Less than 20% say they want to learn a new skill. And I'm like, guys, what if we all learned the skill of how to work with our brain and change habits? Imagine how the rest down the line will feel so much easier. And it's just, it's amazing once you can see the gaps and see, oh my goodness, I see why I'm doing that. And I understand why this is hard. We just can give ourselves so much more grace. And I'm telling you, when we are loving ourselves through change, we can be unstoppable.
It's so true. And I really appreciate how you, as a scientist, want to make sure that you're coming with the receipts on why this is so important and why it works. Now, you partnered with the National MS Society on a study, and you're studying the results of what 6 months of one-on-one coaching can do for patients. And I understand you'll be presenting the data this spring. What are you finding about coaching and the impact it has on patients' lives and their outcomes?
Yeah, we did present it, and it was positive. It was 2 6-month cohorts. And one thing that is you'll totally understand and I imagine relate to as a physician is when something is proven in studies to work. So let's say a new medication is proven to work. The gap, the delay in time until it becomes the standard of care and is in all the guidelines is about 17 years, guys, 17 years, because it's slow moving. We are starting to get so much good evidence on high quality coaching, changing people's health, changing the course of their life. And the tools that we measure, and we measured these in this study as well, is something called self-efficacy, which the best way I can describe self-efficacy, it's like that voice in your head when you're walking around and you're telling yourself, I can do this and this matters. Like that's not something you're born with or not. That's something that you can boost through very specific habits. And so, when I build my coaching containers, it's with these habits in mind, because I know from the research that when we can boost self-efficacy, we're healthier, we're happier, our quality of life is better. And so that's one thing that we measured. We measure quality of life, we measure fatigue, and coaching is showing to save money. No surprise that if we can put, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And so all of these things are being shown. What I'm here to do is hopefully shorten that 17 years until you meet people on the street and they're like, oh yeah, my coach said that. And we are in that gap right now. And so if you are, someone who's like most people, you may not have a coach. Most people don't have a coach. And even for me, when I first had a coach for the first couple of years, I noticed that people would say, and this was almost 15 years ago, people would say, how are you so well adjusted? The same year I was diagnosed with MS, I went through a heartbreaking, unexpected, unwanted divorce, and I was in a car accident. And people would say, how do you have this ability to, still be peaceful, it seems like, and be happy? And I noticed that I wasn't owning that I had a coach. And finally I realized I am part of this problem. And so I started just telling anyone who would listen. And it's funny because I still don't have people in my life who have coaches. So there's still some sort of gap there of people who think I should be able to do this on my own. And I attract a lot of physicians. I have 2 or 3 in my group. I have physical therapists, nurses, pharmacists, therapists. And when other members see that these experts are in here getting support, I think it's beautiful because it's like, oh, they don't have it figured out either. None of us do. We all can use support. That was a long tangent. I don't know if I answered the question, but I just kept going.
I love it. No, none of us have it all figured out. And the smartest people in our world, they're setting that intention, right? I don't want to call it a New Year's resolution. I say they're setting the intention to learn the new skills, right? Because they know, okay, I'll get that motor memory down and then I'll change my life, right?
Yes,
When we don't do the piano concerto like in front of the audience and talk about how this is just such an amazing part of our life. We start with like learning how to do our scales and
absolutely.
just going through the motor memory, and then we build to that's transformational, and then we build to the part where we get to look back and say, wow, I did that. But it's taking those little steps. And when we think, okay, so how do you learn the piano? You get a piano teacher. And no one would think anything, they think it was maybe a little silly to try to do it without a piano teacher. Cause yeah, maybe you'll learn a few songs, but you won't get the theory down, right? You won't learn from the body of knowledge that will really prepare you for doing the best you can. And coaching is the same. It really prepares you in a different way. And I feel the same. I think every medical student should have coaching because I think it would probably help them with navigating medical school.
Yep.
And then also with just being able to empathize and break down. I feel like sometimes as a physician, as a doctor, you are so blessed to be given this sacred position where someone that you do not know well opens up some of their deepest truths to you, their greatest fears, and you learn things about them that many people, the closest people in their lives, will never know potentially, right? You have this beautiful opportunity to be very close to your patients and to be such a benefit to them. But there's a wall there often. And I think coaching is the key to breaking through that wall for you as a clinician to better serve and show up for them, and also to better show up for yourself as you are navigating the challenging, the very challenging lifestyle that it is to be a physician, to be a pharmacist. These things aren't easy for us either, which is why we find ourselves looking
Yeah.
for coaches to help us do better, to
Yeah.
help ourselves and the people we care about. So I believe so strongly in the work you're doing. I think you have a really just such a sound scientific framework. And it was, so cool to have you on the show today to share that with people. And I feel so strongly that it has inspired people and put these little seeds that then they're going to be planting and tending to and nurturing over time of habits and changes in mindset to help them live a happier, healthier life.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate the space to talk about it, and I get kind of passionate about it. But the first sign would be if you hear the word habit and you feel any dread or, not quite sure, then that's a good sign that, hey, I could think about habits different, because they really can be such
Mm.
a tool that we can make fun, enjoyable, and really use to our advantage. And, with this skill, you can make them inevitable too. So yeah, if nothing else, hopefully people leave with a little more excitement that, hey, I could put some of the good stuff on autopilot.
I love it. What is that fear in the pit of your stomach when you hear certain words? What is it telling you? And can we get curious about that instead of furious? I love it. Amy, how can our audience learn more about the work you're doing, connect with you, and if it aligns with their goals, work with you?
Yeah, I alluded to the quiz. I think it's a kind of a neat way if you feel any overwhelm or where do I start? It's a beautiful place to start because it's personalized. It will help pull from you, where is that desire to get started, and maybe help you calm the little voice saying, oh, that's not enough, I need to do more. Start there. And, from that, you will enter into my world, and I can help with some of the how, is what I like to say, that, knowing what to do is great. And that goes only so far, like we said. So getting some of the how, you can reply to any email. It's always me who answers. And yeah, I share some of these strategies and some of these frameworks to help with the how. I also, as you mentioned, have a podcast called Autoimmune Health Secrets. And I named it that because the worst kept secret is that habits can help us live a better life. But the best kept secret is how to actually do it, how to actually, like I said, make it fun and effective and inevitable. So that would be a great way to learn more. And if anybody just knows, you know what, I want to try and have a coach as well. My program is called Club Habit Hub, and it is just what we need to solve for all these reasons and do it in a way that feels doable in real life. No pausing life, but instead figuring out how to incorporate it. And so that can be found on my website in the link as well.
Thank you so much, Amy. It has been so wonderful to have you here. I appreciate you so much and just so excited about the work you're doing.
Thank you so much.
And we want to thank you, our storytellers, for being here as well. We hope you took away some great tips for embracing healthy habits in your life today. I know I did. Let us know what you loved and what you learned by engaging with us on the Talks with Dr. Shafer platform. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show where you love podcasts so that you don't miss any of the upcoming inspiring episodes. As always, until next time, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.
Everybody's lonely, but you can hold on to